Hi, everybody. You are going to be blown away by this second podcast that we are posting from taking our hiatus for a while. Davin is a friend of ours, a volunteer to the ministry. He is a retired San Francisco police officer who went down some really dark paths, and God just really grabbed a hold of Davin and turned his life around. I really, really hope that you take some time to watch this or listen to this story of this retired San Francisco police officer who really went, like I said, he went wayward and turned his life around and is doing great now. And it's all because of our Lord Jesus Christ. If you are a police officer or a first responder, thank you very much for this hard job you do and the task that you do every day. We know it's a very difficult job that you do, and we know that there's a lot of tremendous amount of stress in your life, and it puts a lot of stress on your families and your marriages. And we know that there's a lot of opportunities for you guys to go down bad paths, and some of you do, and some of you don't. But we know that it takes a toll in your life. We really hope that somebody that's a first responder actually listens to this, and if you are going down this path, contact us at info@streetlifeministries.org, and we'd like to get you in contact with Davin. He would love to help you out and give you some advice and some areas where you can go seek some help. We know it's really hard. Thank you for your service out there on the streets, keeping us safe and watching over us and keeping our families able to keep going. We really appreciate you, and I really hope you enjoy this next video. Thank you so much, and God bless you from all of us at Street Life Ministries. All right, hello, everybody. I'm here with my friend Davin, and this is a very powerful testimony. I'm very excited to have you here. Retired San Francisco police officer with a crazy, crazy story that you guys will really, really love to hear. And gotten to know Davin. He volunteers for Street Life Ministries as a driver and now helps other police officers and helps agencies that are having struggles independently with other officers, and can't wait to get into a story. So let's just go ahead and open up in prayer, and then we'll get started. So Heavenly Father, we just want to say thank you for saving Davin's life, Lord, and giving him a testimony that is so powerful, God. I pray that his testimony today and the story that he shares, Lord, that somebody, maybe a law enforcement agent or officer will hear this story, or somebody that's working for a city or county will hear his story and feel so compelled to be able to reach out and maybe even call Davin or email us and want to get connected so they can turn their life around. So we're just hoping that this story goes out and changes lives. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So I pretty much kind of know some of your story.
Mm-hmm.
We've shared your story once before, but you've had a lot of things happen since your turnaround. So why don't you give us a little bit of a history, who you are, kind of what happened, and where you are today.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
My name's Davin. I worked in San Francisco. First off, I grew up in San Francisco, practically born and raised there. We moved down from Portland, Oregon when I was about a year and a half old. Was educated there. I like to say San Francisco raised me, educated me, and employed me for almost my whole life. Worked in the Sheriff's Department for 4 years, and then worked in the San Francisco Police Department for 27 years. Variety of assignments. I've done plainclothes gang patrol, plainclothes robbery abatement, FTO, training officer. I was a sergeant. I was an acting lieutenant for 3 years prior to my retirement. My longest stint was for 15 years in our canine unit. Out of the last 10 of those years, I was the trainer. So I was in charge of the selection and purchase and training of dogs and any officers assigned to the unit, and then our weekly updated training. Growing up in the city was interesting. A lot of people have this misconception that San Francisco in the 60s and 70s was an enclave of hippies. It really wasn't. It was really just confined to the Haight-Ashbury. But that being said, that was my life growing up. My mom was very well entrenched in the hippie community. Psychedelic concerts when I was probably 2 years old. She participated in the sales of marijuana with her friends, like large quantities of marijuana. Sometimes other illicit narcotics were being sold. When I was 6 years old, SFPD actually raided my house. I was 6 years old when I opened the door to a knock in the evening, and there were some police officers in suits and uniforms. And next thing you know, my mom is being carted off to jail.
Wow.
Yeah, she was, we talk about layers of trauma, but she was released the next day. No charges. I have my own theories on that. But that was kind of my childhood growing up. Very proud of my mom, though. She got pregnant when she was very young. She was 15 and a half and had 2 boys right away. Then left their dad, married my dad, and then had me about 6 years later. But she did eventually go back to school. She got her electrician's license, and she worked at one of the CBS affiliates here in the Bay Area for 20 years before she retired. So very proud of her. Life wasn't easy raising 3 boys on her own, but also life was not easy for the 3 boys being raised by a single mom who was not home. And we talk about the Gen X latchkey kid. That was me. My brothers were both 18 when I was 12, and they moved out of the house to go live with their dad. My mom worked nights. So for me, I was home alone every day from the age of 12 on. So I pretty much raised myself, cooking my own dinners and deciding if I did homework or not, running the streets until all hours of the night. But managed for the most part to stay out of trouble. My older brother went into law enforcement, and we talked about it a lot. And I ended up following his path and getting in the sheriff's department with him. And then I left the sheriff's department in the city because it was mostly corrections, and I didn't enjoy working the jails that much. I wanted to be out on the streets. So as I said, I got into the police department. I did that for 27 years. I loved it. I still love it to this day, despite the things that happened to me on the job. I was involved in a lot. I was involved in two officer-involved shootings, exposed to just a lot of trauma. As we're finding out now, it's with first responders and police officers, we're exposed to a lot of trauma. And there's not always a singular incident that could trigger mental health issues. It's usually just the cumulative effect of that exposure. So as I said, I was in the canine unit, and it's probably been almost 20 years ago now. I was doing a training scenario and was bit very bad. It was a very severe dog bite. It left about a golf ball sized chunk of my leg missing. All the way down. You could see the calf muscle when they got me to the hospital and they cleaned out the wound. You could easily stick 3 fingers in the hole. I mean, It was that big of a hole. Calf muscle, you could clearly, I have pictures of it where you can see the calf muscle inside of the wound. So it was a bad bite. They sent me home with pain meds and antibiotics, but I was back at the hospital 3 days later with a bad infection. Ended up at the hospital for a week. Got out, light duty for several months. The whole time I was in chronic pain, high doses of opioid pain medication. And that continued for several years with the chronic pain. There was a point, probably 2.5 years in, where I was doing a follow-up with my pain manager, getting a refill. And what had happened was I had nerve damage. I had an impinged nerve at the site of the wound, and there was constant pressure on the nerve, so it was causing me constant pain. So it was wake up in pain, go to bed in pain. There was really no amount of opioids that could get rid of the pain. Good days I could get down to a 3 or a 4. Most days it was just a 5, and I learned to live with that chronic pain. But I do remember at one point talking to a neurologist about long-term, what does this look like long-term for me? And he told me, he goes, this is probably as good as it's going to get for you. Oof. And that was a kick to the gut. I was early 40s. I still had, good 15 years probably left in my career. And I couldn't believe that this was going to be my life. For every day now, I was going to have to deal with this chronic pain. Chronic pain is not just physically taxing, it's emotionally taxing. There's days where you just like, I don't want to be in pain today. I don't want to take these pain meds. I tried to quit a couple times. Cold turkey, not smart. You won't die, but you definitely do not want to go through that. Ran out a few times and went through the withdrawals. Again, it's not pleasant, but worked through it with my pain manager, on kind of finding the best level, and how many a day I was going to end up taking. And that continued on for another year or so before they actually found some surgeons who were able to go in and repair that damage to the nerves. And 1.5 months, 2 months after the surgery, I was pretty much pain-free. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. I was just praising God. It was a miracle because they really didn't think there was anything they could do. And actually the surgery that they performed on my leg was a new surgery. They'd only done about 50 surgeries prior.
Wow.
But they were having a lot of success. And they were doing it mostly on wrists, something very similar to carpal tunnel syndrome. And as the doctor told me when I asked, is this experimental? She laughs and goes, well, we've only worked on wrists. This will be the first time we work on something other, but we think it will be a success on it. And it was. But at that time, I already knew I had become addicted to the pain meds. Okay. Probably about a year and a half in, I knew that I was addicted. I knew I wanted those pills. I wanted to take them every day. Yeah, I had pain. I needed it for the pain. But I also knew there was a large part of me that enjoyed taking the pain meds. I couldn't wait to take my first dose because at work, I couldn't take any. But as soon as I was off duty, there was pills in my car and I'd start popping them on the way home. On my days off, I'd pop the pills all day long. I always wanted to be high. And for me, and a lot of people like me, I found out is I didn't get the usual like drowsiness and just like want to sit there and veg out. Got a sense of, it's almost like elation. This I called it my happy pills. And as I've talked to a lot of first responders who did develop an opioid addiction, pretty much 95% of us say, yeah, they were our happy pills. They put us in a good mood and we enjoyed it. And that good mood actually made us feel energetic. So that continued. So as my pain manager is like, okay, your leg's healed, let's wean you off the pain meds. I'm thinking in my head, I don't really want to wean off of these pain meds. What am I going to do? What's going to keep me happy?
Right.
And this whole time I didn't understand, why do I need to be happy? What am I trying to fix? I was and still am in a great marriage. I have a wonderful wife. My daughters are doing great. I was doing great in my career. There was no money issue. There's nothing that you might be able to point at and go, wow, that's what's going on with you. This is why you're self-medicating because you're dealing with this. But I didn't want to stop taking them, and I wasn't going to stop taking them. That was kind of a decision that was made, voluntarily or not. That's the nature of addiction. So went to, it was a workers' comp case. They closed out my case. I went back to my family doctor. He knew about the initial injury. And when he asked about it, I told him, oh, no, I'm still in pain. I still need the pain meds, but workers' comp closed it out. And he's like, okay, and where are you at? And wrote me the script, and that continued. And just got my refills every month and took my pills every month. Rarely made it to the end of the month. Initially before, when the laws were a little more lax and we didn't really have the attention that we have now with the opioid crisis, you could refill after 20 days. No question asked. No one was like, why are you refilling after 20 days? It's 20 days, here's your script, go refill. You're in chronic pain, you need them. No questions asked. And that was great. I usually could make it 20 days. If not, the last couple of days, I just try to taper down. Any pill addict will tell you that, you start cutting the pills in half, sometimes cutting it down to a quarter so you can have something at least will keep the serious side effects of withdrawals from kicking in. But you knew you were a day away from your refill, so you'd make it. So that continued for several more years. During that time period, I promoted to sergeant, worked investigations, went back to patrol, worked patrol, eventually was asked to, I worked in the city in the Mission District post Super Bowl 50. The homeless crisis as it is then, but as it is now, it was then very serious. But a lot of the issues were focused in the Mission District. So the politicians, the mayor's office, and the powers to be decided that, hey, whatever we've been doing isn't working. And they decided, let's take all the city departments that work on homelessness. So the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing, HOT Team, Police Department, Department of Public Health, Fire Department's Paramedic Division, Public Works, anybody that on a regular daily basis has to respond out to calls about homeless encampments. Why don't you guys work together? Why don't you create a collaboration of unity where you're working together and you're strategizing together? And let's see how this works. And we did it in the Mission. A lot of success. We got a lot of people in the shelters, started cleaning up the encampments, providing services. It was a tough battle because nobody was happy. The people who wanted the encampments gone didn't care where we put them. And the people who didn't want us to close the encampments wanted us to leave them alone and leave them there. And so, it was a two-front battle for us. Nobody was going to be happy with what we were doing, but we we sat down and we knew what needed to be done. We were there in the trenches. We understood, what was the best strategy. And it was a service and compassion first model. Even from the police department, we weren't there to arrest anybody. If you committed a crime or you had a warrant, yeah, we had to do our duty. But for the most part, we were there to, as police officers in uniform, to offer services, to try to get them into shelters and work with our civilian partners to make sure they were safe and that they had the resources and the backing they needed to do their job. Shortly after I started that, San Francisco PD and LAPD were recipients of a state grant to start a model based on a model they started in Seattle called LEAD, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. This was a pre-arrest deflection and diversion model. So the idea was that when officers were out in the field and they were called out to make an arrest for somebody committing auto break-ins, shoplifting, crimes typically associated with feeding your drug habit, that in lieu of bringing them into the judicial system, trying to divert them or deflect them into services. And so with the LEAD program, the officers would have familiarity with these people because they'd arrested them multiple times. They would feel like they were a good candidate. They would do an initial assessment themselves. If the person would agree to it, we would call down to the civilian lead coordinator at public health. They'd check a couple other things for eligibility. And if they accepted, within 20 minutes of that phone call, we could have a case manager out there in the field. We didn't even bring them to the station. We didn't book them at the county jail. We said, hey, in lieu of this, we're going to have a case manager come right here and pick you up.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a great program. It really is a great model.
Is that still going now?
In San Francisco, it was defunded because of the defunded police movement, partially, not fully, but it led to it.
Yeah.
Seattle still runs it. There's similar, the LEAD program is a nationwide model that a lot of police departments have adapted. And then there's other similar models. Those who were in the initial LEAD program are still receiving the LEAD services, but they haven't taken any new people in as far as I know. So I was tasked to, hey, we want you to be part of this group because it kind of ties into what you're doing with homelessness. And at that time it was me and 8 officers. We were the extent of the SFPD team. Because of the success we had in the mission, they wanted to grow it citywide. Because every district, all of a sudden, all these district supervisors on the board of supervisors like, well, hey, that's looking good in the mission. Can we get that in our district? Yeah. So they said, let's expand it citywide. We did. I was still working out of Mission Station, so I had two hats. I was a patrol supervisor, and then I was also the homeless coordinator citywide. But they said, hey, that's too much for you, and we want to grow your team. We want you to come over to the citywide team. So eventually it was me, another sergeant, and 14 officers. Eventually we grew till they moved me into a lieutenant's position. So there was 2 lieutenants, a captain above us. I had 4 sergeants under me and 40 officers. So you imagine, this is a huge team. Citywide, we had 18-hour coverage with our team. And that's what we did. With the LEAD program, I eventually became the coordinator. So I was managing that whole program on top of that. But internally, I was struggling. This was post-surgery. This was me going to get refills for my pain meds every day, or I wish every day back then, honestly, every month. And struggling with that addiction. And the irony of me being out there helping people with addiction issues and mental health issues, which I didn't know at the time I was also suffering with. And I would spend hours, sometimes days, trying to talk people into this LEAD program or into these shelters that provided these services, and would go home and look at myself in the mirror and be like, why can't I ask for help? And this is common among a lot of people, but in the first responder community, it's huge, of not being able to ask for help. We're the peacekeepers. We're the heroes. We're the ones, when you call 911, we show up. We don't have our own 911.
So let me ask you this. Did you know at the time when you were going home, did you know that you were an addict?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so
every night. I knew.
Knew. Oh, okay.
I knew. Once, like I said, about 2 years into post injury. So about 2 years after the injury, I knew, but I needed the pain meds, And then when the surgery happened, there was no doubt in my mind. I didn't have pain. I had some pain still.
But you still needed the pain.
But I still wanted the pills. I still wanted the opioids. I still wanted something to make me feel happy. And so I wasn't going to stop. I was never going to tell my doctor, hey, I'm pain free. You don't need to give these anymore. But there came about 7 8 years into this addiction, and I'm done. I'm done with it. I'm like, the struggle of the refill started to get really bad. As the laws changed, like I said, 20 days, I could usually make 20 days. But as the laws change where, you can't get a refill till a week in advance, and then 3 days in advance. And then it became you couldn't get the refill until 1 day in advance. So you get a 30-day prescription, you can't get that refill until the 29th day.
Oh.
And that's where the struggles really started. That's when I was like, I can't make it 29 days. I barely made it 20. How am I making it 29 days? And you get creative, like any addict. I realized that, I did a little doctor shopping. So I would say I got hurt on duty sometimes. I would get hurt. I would tweak my back. When you're doing police work, especially when I was still doing the dog training, you get hurt. And I'd go and say, hey, my back hurts. Knowing that back pain is the easiest thing to get medicines for.
Right.
And they'd give you a prescription. And they didn't check. So I could fill one, workers' comp paid for it, fill another one, and my insurance covered it. And there was they didn't talk to each other. So They didn't know I was double dipping. But again, those laws changed. And so that became harder. But then I found that, I had family members who were on regular prescriptions who didn't need them and had no problem giving me theirs that they didn't finish up. You learn through the gift of gab that a lot of cops get hurt and they don't like taking them. They're like, yeah, they gave me a 30-day supply and I took it for 1 day. I don't want it. You want mine. And just like I said, you get creative in finding ways to get a hold of these opioids.
So that's very addict behavior.
Very addict behavior, yes. No.
Yes, I know that behavior very well.
But people start asking me, well, why didn't you're a cop? You just go jam up a drug dealer and steal their drugs. Or you could go on Craigslist. Well, the funny thing is, and then again, this is a lot of first responders, but also a lot of them don't. A lot of them just go full on criminal. I just had this moral line that I didn't want to cross. It was like not using at work. Like, no, I'm not going to use at work. That would be crossing a line.
Sure.
And it's these justifications that addicts give. I'm not really like, I haven't been arrested. I don't drive drunk. I don't use at work. Yeah. I don't show up to work high. So it's still okay. And they say it's a misnomer in my book, but they call us functioning addicts. You're a functioning addict. You go into work and some people, you're coaching your kids' games and life is dandy and no one knows what's going on, but you're still struggling. You're not really functioning. You're just surviving.
Well, that's how, in reality, that's how I was with my meth addiction.
Yeah.
I would use it. I'd start on Friday. I'd stop by late Saturday, go to sleep for a full day on Sunday, and then by Monday I'd go to work.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, I'm good until Saturday turned into Sunday, and then Sunday turned into Monday, and then you recalibrate another adjustment.
Yeah. Yes.
It's good. Oh, well, it's okay. I need to get this because I know I'm going to be driving because I was a truck driver. Okay. I know I'm going to be driving a long distance, so this is okay. Yeah. It's so common we're so good at justifying our addictions.
Well, of course, you don't want it to stop. You really, never, even in the height of I'm an addict, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of living this life where I have to do this and that. Like even to go pick up my prescription, I'd have to sneak out of the house some way because I didn't want my wife. My wife didn't know I was refilling these pills every month. She had no clue. But as it got more difficult to keep taking the pills, I had to find something to supplement that. And so for me, it was alcohol. Mm-hmm. I'll just start drinking. And initially it was this sliding scale of if I had a lot of pills, I only drank a little bit. But if I was almost running out, I would just drink more. And eventually those two lines became blurred where I was just popping pills and drinking. Every night I was drinking. But I have the same thing. Like I don't drink during the day because I don't want to be drowsy. I don't want to be knocked out.
Yeah.
But I worked a day shift. At some point I got moved to a day shift where I had to be at work at 4:30 in the morning. Or wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I needed to go to bed early, so alcohol was my go-to. The pills, like I said, didn't really knock me out enough to put me to sleep, but the alcohol definitely would. So I started drinking heavily. And I was done with it. And the depression was really starting to kick in. And I would try to stop drinking. I would tell myself, okay, Davin, once you stop drinking, then we'll work on the pills. And you stop taking the pills. So let's do the drinking first. Let's not tackle both. It's too much. Never made it more than a week. Made it 30 days once off of the alcohol, but went right back. The tragedy of part of that for me was that my department, SFPD, has a really good employee assistance program. We call it our behavioral science unit. We have the resources. We have a unit dedicated to just providing resources for police officers. But like I said earlier, there's that stigma, both internally and externally. There are still people that are like, well, you only go to BSU because you can't hack it anymore. You know, if you're drinking too much or you're popping pills, you shouldn't be a cop anymore because you just can't handle the job, which is bullshit. But people say that. And so I just couldn't bring myself. And there was the shame and the guilt of like, this is who I became. You know, I'm out here helping people get off of drugs, but I'm not going to help myself. What a loser I am.
Oh, yeah.
And you beat yourself.
Very, very common.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, very common. And so the depression was getting stronger. You know, now we're up to COVID hits. And like everyone else, well, I got to supplement what I'm doing with the COVID. The world's in a lockdown and depression. And, you know, so the drinking started to increase. But my depression was just bad.
Yeah.
And again, I would just sit there like, what the heck is wrong with me? Because again, I'm rocking it at work. They put me in an acting lieutenant's position. I was on the promotional. Normally you don't get acting lieutenant or acting captain more than like a couple of weeks. You're filling in for somebody on vacation. But in my case, they're like, no, we want you to be a lieutenant in charge of the unit. We're giving you this position. 3 years, like unheard of to go that long. Well liked in my department. I was the department expert on homelessness. I went to every single community meeting in the city. I had staff from the mayor's office, staff from the board of supervisors, first name basis with many of the politicians. You know, they knew me. They knew who to call. If we need something done, call Lieutenant Cole. He's going to have somebody out here helping us out. And we know it's not going to be cops arresting people. We know he's going to send his team and offer. So everything from the outside, anybody looking at me is like, your life is great. You got a beautiful wife. You've been married over 20 years. Your kids are doing great in school. You know, why are you struggling? And I didn't know. I would just sit there like, what the hell's wrong with me? And my only answer was, I'm a loser. I'm just a big loser because everything's going great and all I could do is pop pills and drink alcohol. Yeah. And as that depression got worse, I just was giving up. I was like, I'm never going to get out of this. I'm just stuck. And I don't want to be an addict for the rest of my life. I don't want to live like this anymore. You know, I just want to end my life. I want it to end. But I didn't want to do that to my wife and my girls. You know, I didn't want to leave that burden with them. But I also didn't want to live like this anymore. So then my plan was, let's not make it look like a suicide. Let's make it look like an accident. I will drive my car off of a cliff over here on the coast. Devil's Slide, you know it well, right? I'll just drive right off of Devil's Slide. And now nobody survives. It's a 300-foot straight down drop into the ocean. I won't live. But a part of me is like, oh my God, what if I do live? What if I'm crippled? You know, all these things that go through your head. But, you know, I love my wife and my daughters too much. Not myself. I don't love myself enough not to do it. But them, I loved enough. I'm not going to do that. Now we're rolling into 2021. And an extended family members, no direct relation to me, but a relation to my brother's in-laws, committed suicide because of their alcoholism. And I was like, man, that's going to be me. Yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to end up killing myself because ends up only being the answer left when you look at it. And that would have been around, I'm going to say October of 2021. Every day now is a struggle. Every night I'm crying myself to sleep. Every night I'm drinking about a half of a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. I could just gulp down a quarter of a bottle of vodka in one shot. No problem. Just straight. I'd stopped mixing alcohol a long time ago. Everything was straight from the bottle. And I switched like a lot of alcoholics to vodka. You know, less calories, it doesn't smell as strong, cheaper. But yeah, I mean, we had been on vacation in Bali and we were at the beach and I excused myself to go to the bathroom so I could run into this bar. And we were telling the guy to get two double shots of vodka, and he stacks them up on the bar, and I'm just like, boom, boom. And even the bartender looked at me like, holy crap. I just looked at him and I go, like a champ, huh? And walked out, and no big deal, but that's the degree of my alcoholism. Yeah. I could just gulp it like that. But I was done. I was like, I can't do it anymore. I just can't do this anymore. And I knew at some point I was going to be so drunk that I wasn't going to stop myself. I think one of the saving graces there was I only drank at home. I was a lone drinker. I just isolated in my bedroom like a lot of alcoholics. I didn't go to bars. Even at weddings, I didn't drink. I could go to a wedding or a social event and have 1 or 2 beers and be great. No, I wanted to be drunk alone in my room in my sorrows. But every day was a struggle. Every day was getting harder. I was doing my best to be this happy, great cop with a great family, but I knew inside I wasn't feeling it. And we're in November. I have a destiny wedding to go to down in Mexico. I'm leaving on a Saturday. It's Wednesday, and I have 1 pill left. And I can't get a refill for another week and a half. And I'm like, crap, all right, let me go reach out to my family member and get a handful, and maybe even enough to get me down to Mexico. I know over the counter I could buy them there, no problem. And they don't have any. I'm like, oh, crap. What am I going to do now? I have no one else to turn to. And I'm calculating, like I said, I'd been through withdrawals before. I'd run out before. The first 2 days aren't too bad. You start to feel weak and a little bit tired. But that 3rd, 4th day, I won't go into the graphics, but you're not keeping anything down, both sides. It feels like the worst flu you could ever have. Your body hurts. You don't want to get out of bed. And I'm like, crap. In 4 days, I'm supposed to be on a plane to Mexico with my family. I can't even envision myself on a plane in that condition. And I'm dad. I'm supposed to get everything ready. I'm supposed to have the passports and the tickets, and I'm supposed to, make sure we're packing everything. And, I'm dad. Yeah. I can't be sick and done and pooping myself. And what am I going to do? And people ask, like, why didn't you think of Craigslist? I don't know. I know now. But in my head, the only thing that came up was that, just go rob a pharmacy. Just go rob a pharmacy. It's like robbing a bank. There's no victims. You're stealing from a corporation. No one's going to get hurt. Walk in, give them a note, walk out. But you know what? And this is what I'm telling myself. But you know what, Davin? This is bad. Yeah. This is where you're at. So when you get back from Mexico, you're going to get help. That's that. So let's get you through Mexico. Let's get you back. And when you come back, you're going to go down and ask for help. But I am not going to jail. There's no way I'm going to jail. So I'm going to bring my gun. And my mind, right? Nobody gets arrested on their first crime. So cops aren't coming. They're not supposed to call the cops until you leave anyway. So I'll be in my car long gone. But if they do show up, I'm just going to quickly shoot myself in the head and end it. I'm not going to jail. That's not going to happen to me. Man. And so that was my plan. I go in the pharmacy, I give them a note, and I see the pharmacist pick up the phone. I see her I can read her lips. She's giving my description: white male, gray hoodie. Like, I'm watching her, and I'm just sitting there. Like, she's calling the cops. This is in San Mateo. It's a small city. It's not like it's going to take an hour for them to get there. They're going to be there in seconds. I just wait and wait and wait and wait. And finally, they put the pills in the bag, and they give me like 9 bottles of pills. They hand it to me, and I walk out and get about 10 steps, and there's the police. And initially, I think, run. I think I ran across the street, and I'm just like, what are you doing? And I just lay down. I give up. And as soon as they handcuff me, I tell them who I am. Like, just so you know, I'm an off-duty cop. And now I'm sitting in the back of a police car, just in my own tears and snot, crying nonstop, banging my head against the cage, just going, that's it. My life is done. Everything I've built over the last, and I was 55, 56 then, everything I built is gone. I've just destroyed everything. But there was also a sense of relief. I was like, I'm done. It's finally over. One way or the other, this is over. And we've looked back. I've talked about it with my therapist and to my mat doctor, and everybody agrees. That was my cry for help. I was a cop. I probably should have known how to plan a crime better than I did. Like, I parked my car far away. I picked a busy time of the day. Just all the things you shouldn't do. But I end up getting booked in to the county jail. I sit there in the county jail, and I grab the phone cord on 3 separate occasions and wrap it around my neck. So I'm just like, well, now I got to kill myself because I have nothing left. But it doesn't. I believe the hand of God was there that whole time, saying, don't worry, this too shall pass. You're going to get through this. My department, to the credit, my wife bails me out at 4 a.m. They're at my house, the police department representatives from our employee assistance program. They're there at 10 a.m. and they're like, we're here. Whatever you need, we're here. Your career's over. You're going to have to resign, but we are here right now for you. And we have a bed for you in a rehab facility. We're taking you there tomorrow morning. At first, I'm like, no, I have to go to Mexico Saturday. They're just like, well, no, you're not going to Mexico. You're going to rehab. And they go, if we have to, we'll drag you there. You're not. I was like, yeah, what am I thinking? So the arrest happens. I bail out. I go to a 30-day treatment. Get out of there. I go to a 90-day IOP. In the interim, my department does allow me to resign. They allow me to retire. I was fortunate. I got to keep my benefits. It would have been hard for them to take it because this happened off duty. Also, as I found out later, I went into therapy, found out I had a very serious, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So again, I didn't have a singular triggering incident that caused my PTSD. It was this cumulative effect of the repeated exposure. And the statistics I like to tell people is that on average, the regular person will be exposed to 4 or 5 traumatic incidents in their life. Police officers and first responders are exposed to 3 or 4 a month. So you do the math on that. 4 or 5 for your whole life. That's 300 to 400 our whole life.
Right.
And it has an effect on you. And that's why they call it a cumulative post-traumatic stress disorder, or it's that repeated exposure. So, that would have been a fight for the department of, you created this unhealthy me. And so they didn't fight me, to their credit. They're like, no, we're going to let you retire. You've been a great employee. Politicians were rooting for me. And so that next year, though, I was in limbo. I didn't know what was going to happen. Am I going to prison? Am I going to jail? Am I going to get probation? What are they going to do with me? I've destroyed my life. I'm still just now figuring out that I have this PTSD. I'm just starting therapy, but I'm still messed up in the head. I'm still depressed. They get me on antidepressants. I'm going to therapy every week, but I do relapse on the alcohol 2 more times. Go back into another 30-day treatment, come out of there. Just kind of struggle mentally till the end of the year, December 23rd of 2022, I find out my fate. I go to court. I knew I was going to be taken into custody. We kind of knew what was going to happen. And on that date, I pled no contest a month prior. So my sentencing was 3 years of felony probation and a year in the county jail, of which I served 6 months. That 6 months was in what some people say solitary confinement. It's administrative segregation because of my status as a former police officer. I wasn't allowed out with other inmates. I was locked in my cell 23 and a half hours a day. 30 minutes I got out was to shower and call my family. So it gave me just enough time to get a 15-minute phone call in once a day, get a shower in every other day, stretch my legs, and then back into my cell. No access to resources, unfortunately, again, because of my status. I didn't have access to AA, didn't have access to NA, couldn't even get a big book there. Couldn't get in sessions with any therapists. But I did go in there saying, I'm not going to let myself decline. I'm not going to let myself start to slide back. Let me just maintain the 6 months, got out, went back into rehab, worked through that PTSD, felt really good about myself. And after about 6-7 months, realized through having gone through this facility I went through that caters to everyone, but first responders go there. LinkedIn, different avenues. I started realizing this was a lot worse than I thought in the first responder community. Mental health and addiction, pretty much hand in hand, were a serious issue. And we're not giving enough attention to it, and decided that's what I was going to dedicate myself to. Started reaching out to podcasters that focused on mental health, particularly in the first responder community. Been on probably a couple dozen podcasts, including yours early on. And that's what I've been doing for the last a little bit over a year and a half now. I just started going out and doing public speaking. I'll be in Omaha next week giving a talk. I talk at peer support classes for first responders. And that's it. That's kind of what I've done with my life. And it's my story and I own it.
Yeah. So, man, I every time I heard your story, it's so powerful. I think this was probably the most vivid.
Yeah.
You've described it because now you're kind of like past it.
Yeah.
So and you've shared it more. So it's a little bit more polished, but man, that's just, addiction is crazy. I tell people all the time, I did things in my addiction that even to this day even though I know that God has taken it away from me, when I sit there and think about it, I've done things that I'm so ashamed of. I mean, I told myself I would never dig in a garbage can for food. I dug in a garbage can for food. I told myself I would never rob somebody. I robbed a lot of people, stolen cars. And, I said I would never stick a needle in my arm. I stuck it was almost like I cursed myself every time I said, well, I'm not going to do this. And then I would end up doing it. And it's amazing that I've got 19 years sober. You've got how long now?
3.5 years off the opioids and 3 years off the alcohol.
Yeah. So it's like, and I don't know what normal is, but I would consider you and I like, in that kind of, I don't want to jinx it and say we're normal. I don't know if I'm normal or not. I mean, it depends on what day of the week, yes, I was, if I'm normal. Yeah. But for the most part, it's like God gave us this chance to like you just did, to share your story and tell people. And I really pray and hope that somebody will watch this or listen to this podcast and be in that predicament like you, where they feel like there's no hope. Yeah. And they'll hear this and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute. If Davin can do it, I can do it. Yeah. So there was two things that you said that I wanted to ask really quick. So one, you did canine for a while?
Yeah, 15 years.
How was that?
Oh, I loved it. That was the only thing a lot of people go into law enforcement and they're like, oh, I want to be a detective, or I want to ride motorcycles, or I want to do gangs. For me, it was I just wanted to do the canine unit. I'd worked at the department store in San Francisco, and they used to come in there sometimes at night, and I was doing security, so I'd have to stay and help close up. And man, I was like, that looks like a fun thing to do as a cop. So 15 years. Never thought about training aspect. That kind of unfortunately happened when our sergeant, who was the trainer, age 42, about the stresses of our job, age 42, drops dead of a heart attack. Oof. Former Marine, good shape for all we know, just drops dead. So me and another officer, we kind of, hey, we'll take over the training, and I took over the lead position, and her and I so we did. And I loved it. I loved training the dogs. Yeah. I promoted, and policies being what they are, you have to leave the unit. They did ask me to come back a couple times out of respect to my wife. 15 years of bringing home big police dogs, because they live with you. It's 24/7 thing. Yeah. She was just like, I need a break. Yeah. We just no dogs in the house. So when they asked me to come back a couple times as the trainer again, she was like, no, please don't. So
I follow a couple cops on YouTube that they have canines, and they do these little short videos where they're like in the patrol car, and they'll open the slider, and they'll either have a donut or they'll have something, and the dog just it just goes crazy over the food, and he'll take a bite of the donut, and the dog taking a bite of it, and it's just it's the interaction they have is pretty amazing. Because I will tell you, I also watch. I don't know if I can say this on YouTube without getting strike, but I watch Police Activity.
As do I.
Or Police, was it?
Yeah, Police Activity.
Police Activity. And I will tell you, the canines, I mean, they look friendly on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook. Man, if they're chasing you, man, that is one heck of an animal, bro.
Oh, yeah. And as I can attest, you don't want to get bit.
Yes, exactly. Bit by a dog. As you know, from what it spiraled you into.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last question I wanted to ask you is, so going through all of what you went through, obviously your wife and your children went through it.
Yeah.
How's your relationship today?
Going strong. Cool. We just celebrated 29 years of marriage a couple months ago.
Awesome.
Things are great. She's truly a saint. God brought her to me because I needed that. Without her and my daughters and a lot of other support from other good friends I have, I would have never gotten through this. I know that's an issue for a lot of people in recovery. They don't always have that same support system in place. This is why I tell people, if you know somebody going through recovery or trying to, be there for them.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much it means just to have some support. I mean, the people that reached out to me the day after my arrest blew me away. Just people I just did not expect. People in positions of authority in my agency who reached out to me because it's a political hot potato.
Sure.
You can't really align yourself with a cop who just robbed a pharmacy. But they did. And they're like, hey, listen, this is my personal cell phone. You call me. And to this day, I still reach out to them.
Yeah. So just really quick, we'll add one, but so Vicky, who is my admin, who because you drive for us, so she does backgrounds, and so you came, and I knew you were trying to do some community service hours. You're trying to, you wanted to get underneath this situation, and how did you hear about? I can't remember how we connected.
So we had a mutual friend, somebody I worked with in San Francisco on the homeless outreach.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So so when we got connected, and you were very upfront with me, and I will say, and I want everybody to know this because this is not something that happens a lot. When you came, you said, "Hey, listen, I might have to do some time. I'm not sure exactly what my case is. I just really need to get some community service under my belt. But if I go." When I'm done, when I get out or whatever, I will be back. And I've heard that so many times. You're the only one. I just want you to know. I mean, I've heard this story about 15 times. You're the only guy that when you got out, you called me right back. He said, hey, I'm ready to drive, which blew me away. Oh, yeah. But I'll never forget when you started driving, I told Vicky that I said, I think he's like in trouble with the police. I don't know what happened to her. So she looked you up. And she sends me the article, and I'm like, I seen your article because they did, obviously the newspaper, right? There you are in your uniform, and then the Rite Aid, which I used to live right by that Rite Aid. Oh, wow. and I was like, holy cow! I go, wow, that's too serious. yeah. I was like, well, this guy's no joke, and I knew because I'm in recovery. Yeah, and I'm like, holy cow, because you always think you. Selfishly, you think, oh, no, nobody's got a testimony like mine, and then you hear a testimony that's like, holy cow, man, you just blew mine away. But it's awesome, bro. Thank you. I really do appreciate you, and I have a lot of respect for you, and man, like I said, I hope people see this. I do too. So any final thoughts? Anything you want to share with anybody? Anything that you would give, like any kind of bit of hope? Yeah, recovery is possible. You will get better. Find somebody who's where we are today. We are the best testament to recovery. I mean, you need to know, and I think this is a message, and this is what I get asked a lot, like, what would you do differently for first responders? And I say, you need to bring in people like me so they can see what it looks like. So they see there is hope that, I can do it. And like you said, if this could happen to Davin and he got through it, I could get through it. That's true. And I will say that I can almost guarantee there's a lot of police officers or first responders that are going through hard times, and they think that there's nowhere to turn because of the position. And you're proof that you can, and if you don't, this is where it can bring you. There's so many resources out there. It's way better than it was even 5 years ago. But you get on the internet or you reach out to me, we'll find a resource. There's some place that will help you, even if you don't have the money. There are organizations out there that do provide monetary or fiscal help with these type of programs. Yeah, I guarantee when this goes live and we post it out, I guarantee I'm going to get emails. Great. Forward them on to me. That'd be awesome. Yeah. Right on. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pastor.